Thank you very much. Good afternoon. It is a pleasure to be with you again. I want to start my reflection with you with reminding us of something that the Holy Father has said in Fratelli Tutti. He spends a whole chapter on what he calls clouds over a closed world. And all you've got to do is look at our world, the world of which we are a part, a world that we cannot separate ourselves from. Broken down political systems, wars, a culture of indifference. These are things that the Holy Father mentioned. I want to add racial and ethnic discord, conflict over gender identity. In the Holy Father's words, this is not an epic of change, it's a change of epic. It's what some people refer to as deconstruction. That's the world in which we live. And our spirituality cannot in any way remove us from that world. Our baptism calls us to step in and transform it. It shows reflection on the first reading. In fact, the first sentence of the first reading, because it is a message of hope. This is what Revelation says. And then I saw a new heaven and a new earth. The old heaven and the old earth had passed away, and the sea was no more. It's that last phrase, the sea was no more. That's what I want to talk about this afternoon. If you look carefully at the entire biblical tradition, the Bible begins with a reference to chaotic water, and it ends with a reference to chaotic water. And if you will pardon the pun, chaotic water runs through the entire Bible. Now, what is chaotic water? Of course, it is a metaphor. It is a metaphor for discord in society, whatever that discord would mean. So the Holy Father has named some. What he's talking about is chaotic water. Primeval water seems to frame, as I said, our whole biblical story. In Genesis 1, the earth was formless. There are 4 technical terms in Genesis 1, technical terms for chaos. Remember, this is metaphor, all right? That does not mean it's not true. It just means it's not historical, but it's true. And the 4 words are, the text says the earth was formless, that's 1. Void, that's the 2nd. Darkness, that's the 3rd. Covered the face of the deep. That's the word I want us to look at. Deep, tahom. It's chaotic water. Now, these are just some of the places where we find, again, the notion of chaotic waters. It's in Genesis 1, Genesis 7. I'm not going to read all the passages, but just the books so that you get a sense how it runs through the entire Bible. In the book of Job, we've got chaotic water. In Psalm 104, there's chaotic water. In Proverbs 8, water through which the people passed at the time of Exodus, a reference in Isaiah and Nehemiah. Water through which the people, the destructive water in Ezekiel, just a few passages. So this notion of chaotic water, always threatening, also frequently associated with this particular word, tehom, is the word for sea. Now, tehom is a technical term. Whenever it's found in the scriptures, it is referring to this chaotic water. Sea sometimes refers to just an average body of water. But when it's in parallel construction, it also speaks about chaotic waters. Something else about chaotic waters. No one but the Creator God has power over them. So we've got chaotic waters, which means the chaos in society, and the one who can control them is God and only God. So we find the sea in Exodus, we find the sea in Job, in Psalms, in Isaiah. This connection with the sea, brings a word that the chaos kampf, the battle of chaos, that is a very, very prominent theme in the scriptures. Now, that's very important, and one might wonder, why am I focusing on that? Because the passage in Revelation says, a new heaven and a new earth, and the sea is no more. Now, again, now we're getting into Greek in the New Testament. There are two words in Greek, two prominent words that we translate new. One means new, like a new pair of shoes, a replacement of. Another one means new, like transformation. That's the word that is used here in Revelation. A new heaven, a transformed heaven, a new earth, a transformed earth. And it is transformed because of God's work. Now, how are we supposed to transform our society? What are you and I supposed to do? What might we do? What can we do to what's happening in the Ukraine? If we believe that we are all children of God, united, interrelated, interconnected, what can we do? We have a serious responsibility, somehow or other. I don't know about you. I am so upset about what's going on or what's not going on in the Congress, whether that be in the government or on the local level. I live in Wisconsin, where the governor belongs to one political party, and the Congress or the governing, legislative branch is another, and they cannot work. They're always fighting. So this is the world in which we live. This is our world. This is our responsibility. This is our burden. What do we do? That is the question. Now, this probably does not sound like a very positive reflection on the biblical passages. But again, I want to remind you, the Revelation passage is a passage of hope. A passage of hope. A new heaven and a new earth, and chaos, the sea, is no more. Before I move in more into the New Testament, also related with the sea is the sea monster. Sometimes this monster is referred to as the dragon. We find that in Job. Sometimes it is named Leviathan. We find that in Job and also in several Psalms and in Isaiah. Or Rahab, and that's also in Job. Job is filled with chaos. Well, everybody knows that Job's life is a life of chaos. So Rahab is found in Job and in the Psalms and in Isaiah. All of these passages, the sea monster represents the cosmic threat of chaos. These are all separate. Eventually, these separate traditions over years begin to be woven together, and they all, in a certain sense, converge into our understanding of the devil. The sea monster, sometimes represented as a dragon, sometimes, as a snake, right? Always associated with the question of chaos. And when that technical word, tahom, when that word is found, what we're talking about is primordial chaos. One last area that has something to say about chaos and transformation is contemporary cosmology. That in a very real sense, we read this not only in the cosmologists, but in the theologians who are committed to bringing together new cosmology, like Chardin, Eliadelio. They talk about before there is a transformation, before there is a reconstruction, there is a deconstruction. We have all known the metaphor of the butterfly. If the larvae insists on staying in the cocoon, there is no life. There is no new life. There is no transformation. And it will decay. There will only be death. But somehow or other, it must deconstruct. It must decompose for new life to come forward. And it's that deconstruction or that decomposition that is so painful. That's what, please God, that's what we are going through in society now. Not simply destruction. Not simply, destruction is all negative, it's all fatal. But we are going through a kind of transformation into something new. But it is so difficult to go through that, to be broken down, to have all of our systems fall apart. Or again, to quote the Holy Father, to live in not in an epoch of change, but in a change of epoch. This is so dramatically different than anything in the past, which has great hope. That's the question. Do we have hope? Or, to put it better, where is hope to be found? Do we really trust what our religious tradition claims? Do we really? Do we really believe that there can be a new heaven? That there can be a new earth? I don't know about you, but where do those Ukrainians get the chutzpah to hang on and continue believing that they can destroy, or at least not destroy, but keep from being destroyed so that they can rebuild? We stand in awe of them, but that must be our trust as well. Do we really believe when our religious tradition says that there can be something new? Something else about our religious tradition, and that is, it's not enough simply to sit back and pray and do penance. It does not seem to be the way God normally works. God does not normally work alone. Granted, it is God working, but God does not work alone any more than we work alone. It is God working through us. And that's why I place before us the challenge. How can we be involved in this change, in this transformation? If you continue on with the reading of the Revelation story, it's all beautiful. It's all peaceful. You know, the wedding, it's beautiful, peaceful imagery. Don't ever forget what preceded it. The deconstruction of what is no longer good or necessary so that something new can come out of it. We happen to live in the era of deconstruction. I hope that it is deconstruction with the possibility, with the probability of new creation, and not simply the end. And even if it is the end of something, the end can also open up to the new beginning. That's what our faith tells us. That's what this reading tells us. So we move into the New Testament. We still go back to chaotic water. And we're in a different language, thalassos, which is the language, of turmoil or deep, the storm, the raging storm or the furious storm, we find in the synoptic tradition, in Matthew, Mark, and Luke. All of them have the story of Jesus calming the sea. Now, Luke does not have the special word. Mark and Matthew have the special word. And even after the calming of the sea in that narrative, the disciples say, "Who is this who can calm the sea?" That is a rhetorical question, or it should be understood as a rhetorical question, because in their tradition, they knew that only the Creator God has power over unruly water. Their whole tradition says that. Every one of those passages to which I referred indicated that only the Creator God can control primordial unruly water. So if Jesus can control it, that's obviously what the New Testament writer is trying to say. Then make the connection. He must be the all-holy God with the power of creation. So the book of Revelation brings the entire biblical story of unruly water and creation, or better, transformation, to conclusion. Genesis opens that story with the account of the creation of heaven and earth out of chaotic waters. And Revelation announces a new heaven and a new earth where those waters will cease to exist. Don't we wish that we can live to see it? But in a certain sense, even if we don't, we know we will, or we believe that we will see it. Again, we fall back on what we believe. We say it enough. Do we really believe what our religious tradition promises? Or do we expect it's going to happen the way we think it should happen, the way we would like it to happen? That we would all say, you know, some of the things that are going on in the world are foolish, let's just stop it. Wouldn't that be lovely? But it's not, it doesn't normally happen that way. A lot of blood is shed. A lot of things are destroyed, but are they really destroyed, or are they then transformed? Are the hopes then transformed? I keep hitting on the question of transformation because that is the Easter message. The Easter message is not simply that Jesus has risen from the dead, but within that message is the promise that all things will be transformed. And again, I go back to the Revelation passage. A new heaven and a new earth, and the old had passed away, and the sea was no more. So we have this newness, which is really transformative. So if we go back to what the Holy Father says in Fratelli Tutti, I want to once again remind us what we face as if we didn't know. We are not simply in an epoch of change. We are in a change of epoch, and we experience that change in the wars, in the culture of indifference, in racial and ethnic discord. Conflict over gender identification, is that not a confusing kind of a reality? Now, the questions I present as major questions again, which I have. Do we really believe our religious tradition? Might what we're going through, might this be the dismantling that always precedes transformation? And here's where it is not adequate for us to say yes or no. If we say yes, we better put our money where our mouth is. We better really step up and make it sure that, yes, we will do what we are called to do to make sure that this is transformation. And what are we called to do? And here's where the message of the gospel comes in. We are called to love each other. Go back to those terrible clouds of, what does he call them? Clouds of over a closed world. If there was love, think of a change in our political systems. If there was just respect, which is love in action. If we would respect diversity, not change it, respect it. Give people the same credit for their point of view as we would want them to give us. If we just respected people and honored people, would we have the kind of wars and conflicts, the bloody protests? Would we have a culture of indifference? The kind of racial or ethnic discord that we see all the time, or we might be involved in. And sometimes it's a culture or racial, conflicts that we don't even know we're guilty of or complicit. For example, I knew a group of very committed religious women, I will not name the community, who were very committed to learning about racism. They were reading, which is the right books at this particular point in history, talked about, white, not supremacy, but white privilege, genuinely committed. And then somebody within their community said, if we are so committed, then why, when we always hire people to staff our businesses, do we always hire white people? And she was told, Well, they're local. And she said, that's what I mean. We live in a white bubble. So sometimes we don't even know that we perpetuate something simply because we are committed against the evil. We are committed to eradicate the evil, and we're not always even aware that we're complicit in it. So when we talk about this, you know, when we say we love, what does that mean? Where is the respect? Which religious community has recently, and I mean, I can't raise my hand on this one, which religious community has recently instituted affirmative action policy? Remember in the 60s, affirmative action, that sort of fizzled out. I chastise ourselves for doing that. So might this be the dismantling? It's in a very real sense, it's up to us to make a decision whether it is or not. Because the answer to those questions is found in the gospel. And the answer, of course, is love. And we make beautiful banners and sing beautiful songs, especially with scented candles. And I find no fault with these trappings, but sometimes it ends there. It ends there. The gospel says respect. Respect the people who annoy you because of their idiosyncrasies. Thank God we don't have idiosyncrasies to annoy other people. And in that particular sense, again, is where we may not be able to march, you know, in favor of or protest the fuel rise in price. And I'm not in favor of rising in price. But what is that compared to fighting for democracy for the rest of the world, like our brothers and sisters in Ukraine? So I bring all of these things together with these beautiful passages. What the Holy Father says in Fratelli Tutti about the discord in our world, and the travesty sometimes of those of us who claim to be religious people and allow it to happen thinking, you know, that's somebody else's responsibility, and it's not. And the biblical passages that call us, don't forget, friends, we made promises to be heroic, not just nice, to be heroic. Now's our chance to be heroic. The question is, how do we do it? How do we become heroic? The answer is in the gospel. But what does love really mean for us today? I leave that question for our conversation. Thank you.